Thank you for joining Advocis Coffee Talks, espresso-sized webinars for Advocis members. I'm your host, Julie Martini, Vice President of Public Affairs and Marketing at Advocis National, filling in for Sheila Godsey. We're trying something new today. The presentation has been pre-recorded to minimize the risk of technical difficulties. Our presenters, however, are in attendance, and you'll be able to connect with them in the chat box at any time. The presentation will then be followed by a live Q&A session. So to post your questions, please hover your mouse on your screen, and you should see a Q&A button pop up for you. Quick housekeeping item. If you're joining us by phone, please email events@advocis.ca with your full name, Advocis ID, and the phone number you joined from. Our Zoom attendance report tells us how long each of you are on the webinar or call, and in order to receive CE credit, you must attend for the entire webinar. So today we'll be hearing from two individuals that are good to have on speed dial, especially these days. They will tell us how cyber and privacy insurance can combine with IT and data protection practices to protect our business in this digital age. Some of you may have seen an article in Investment Executive this morning that shared survey results from the Global Risk Institute, naming cyber risk as the second key economic concern after economic risk as the top challenge to the financial system in 2021. So I think today's talk is quite timely. So Advocis is your professional association, and I want to take a quick moment to thank our corporate partners and sponsors for helping Advocis continue to build a strong community of financial advisors across Canada. So I'd like to kick this off with a poll. We're going to bring up a question and ask you to choose the answer that suits you. It's anonymous and no one can see who answered, including myself. So the question is, did you experience any cyber incidents in 2020? So this would be phishing emails, compromised passwords, viruses, ransomware attacks, etc. So yes, more than usual. Yes, same as usual. Not sure. No, it was business as usual. So we'll give it a couple of seconds and then we'll pull up the results. So it looks like, yes, it's been a very active year. And even then, it's probably underreported in general. We know that no one wants to admit they clicked on that suspicious link, but again, the poll's anonymous, but it does give a good sense of how it's been, and Geoff will no doubt be talking about that. So with that, I'd like to present our speakers. Jack Mazakian is Principal Broker and Vice President of Advocis Broker Services. Jack has a professional background in accounting and financial management. He's a licensed property and casualty insurance broker across the country. Geoff Le Quelenec is Director of IT at Advocis, and Geoff is a graduate of the Royal Roads University MBA program and holds certifications in business analysis, negotiation, and IT risk management. He has an extensive set of strategic management and technology skills honed by over 20 years of experience. So with that, I'm going to kick it off with Jack.
Thank you, Advocis team, for allowing me to speak today. Hi, everyone. We have a very serious topic to discuss today. If you like it or not, if you are aware or not, you're exposed to cybercrime. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, we are all exposed. But who are we exposed to? These perps, as they say on TV, are perpetrators. Don't think that they are just petty criminals. They're far from that. They are highly sophisticated, very well educated and trained. They have access to a lot of resources. The most important element that you need to know is that the data that you have is a very lucrative product for them. They can sell it and make a lot of money. Today joining me is Geoff. He's exceptionally well trained, very skilled and knowledgeable. He's also my tech leader. He goes into battle every day for us and Advocis. The effects of cyber and data breach could be quite devastating to financial advisors and planners, but also all professionals. You can have an exposure that causes you a loss of your clients. It could damage your reputation and your brand. You could incur expenses, decrease revenues and fines. There is the chance that you can be also publicized, that a breach has occurred. There is the potential that a third-party lawsuit can be brought against you by a number of different sources, including your clients. And finally, the cost of monitoring the data after it's been stolen could be quite extensive, because we are talking about monitoring that could last more than a few years. What are your obligations of the personal information of your clients? It's quite amazing when you start to consider the type of information that you have of your clients, of your businesses, intermediaries, your stakeholders. It is just an example of them are in these two categories, personal and financial information and banking information. But there's also so much more from a social, soft side of things that you would have of your clients that could expose their personal assets and also allow individuals to chase down some of their personal information through their systems. So just simply from a personal financial perspective, details of assets, medical records, signatures, social insurance numbers, copies of contracts and settlements, insurance policies, wills, estates. You have access to an unbelievable amount of information. And that is something that's critical and actually incredibly valuable. Regulatory versus fiduciary obligations. There will always be a regulatory obligation to professionals. There are jurisdictional legislation, there are provincially, federally, so forth. A good example is PIPEDA, the Privacy Act that we enacted in Canada. But that is the base requirement. You also have a fiduciary obligation to your customers. And those are really the key components that you have to contemplate, because ultimately what you want to be in a situation is that this kind of situation hasn't tarnished your reputation or your brand, and you haven't breached your client trust. Ultimately, once you start to breach that trust, you will lose your portfolio, you will lose your clients, and that's the last thing that you need. So what we're hoping to accomplish today in this presentation is to give you an idea of some of the key components of what to do and how to review these elements and this exposure base, but also have certain skill sets and access to certain individuals that could help you. So breaches are quite interesting. They can be categorized simply into 4 categories: hacking, viruses, theft, loss, or damage, leaving, for example, your laptop on a bus or in the backseat of your car and it being stolen; social engineering, someone is accessing your computer system with fraudulent email addresses. Ultimately, we can talk about each one of these categories in depth for days. But just to give you an idea, these are the types of ideas that are being used to be able to access individuals' data. And ultimately, you want to be able to be in a position where you have the firewalls in place, you have the protection in place, so that as they're scanning for the opportunities, they'll just pass by you. Similar to, as Geoff had said yesterday, if someone is looking to rob your house, if they see the lights are on, they'll pass that home, move to the next house because it's just easier that the lights are off, and they'll go there. The similar idea here. As they're scanning the systems, they see that there's a firewall in place, they'll move to another site. So you want to have at least the minimum in place, but also make sure that they're legitimate and bona fide type of security in place. Now let's pass this on to Geoff.
All right, thanks, Jack. We're going to cover some best practices really at a high level. Securing databases and systems and organizations is a very complicated topic, and much more than we could cover in the time we have today. But the number one best practice you want to take away from this is you need a team, you need a support system behind you that's looking at privacy and security for your organization and your clients. This is not something that you do yourself. It's very similar to, the financial services. Yes, I can go to the internet and download an app and try to do money management myself. And we've all seen recently what happens when people download Robinhood and try to run their own finances. But to do it right and to get the best possible outcome, you get a professional financial planner. And in the same way, if you want the best possible outcome, you need various people behind you looking at privacy, looking at cybersecurity, looking at infrastructure. And certainly one of the components of a great team is having an insurance provider who can give you coverage for these sorts of events. So everything always starts with what is the risk, assessing the risk. The starting point as you're building your team is to really identify reliable people. And it's not just your IT consultants or your managed services people, it's everybody that you're working with. You have to be prepared to ask the questions of all the different vendors, all the different teams you're working with. What are you doing about cybersecurity? And whether it's your auditors, whether it's operations staff, whether it's your building management, whether it's your accounting firm, you need to ask everybody, what are you doing about this? Have you certified? Have you assessed? Do you have your own teams in place? Who in your organization is responsible for this? And it's not just enough to say, oh yeah, IT takes care of that. Who in IT? Is it Bob? Great. When Bob's on vacation, who does it? Have you guys done formal certifications? You may not get the answers to all of these questions, but if you ask the questions, then the conversations you're going to have about this are going to give you an idea if you're working with somebody who's dependable and somebody who's reliable. So obviously you have to have a plan. You need to identify and evaluate all of your assets. At the end of the day, if it's plugged into the wall, there's a potential cybersecurity risk. This is just the world we live in now. The fridges talk to the internet. So everything has to be evaluated. Obviously, you're going to prioritize, your threats, and the system security for your servers, your databases is a much higher priority than the threat to your fridge. But if it's not on the list, you're not even going to think about it. So going through everything, guest phones, Wi-Fi networks. Some organizations now, when employees leave the organization and they're sending along, people's belongings after termination. Some organizations will not send USB keys anymore with personal effects. So you really want to think about what are all the possible things that could go on this list. And then obviously you're going to have to prioritize and you're going to have to set some plans in place. Sometimes you just want to say, I don't want to deal with that. And you'll outsource it. You'll move it to the cloud. You'll send it out to a third party. Same thing before you send it out. Yes, you're offshoring or outsourcing the risk, but you're still going to have those same questions that you're going to ask of your consultants. Who's taking care of your security? Are you certified? What plans do you have in place? If you're going to pass the risk along to them, you have to be sure that who you're outsourcing it to can actually absorb that risk appropriately. Internally, even though you're going to want to have a great team behind you, there has to be somebody internally who is responsible for cybersecurity risk and data risk. This is not a departmental accountability. You can't say, well, that's operations. Well, that's IT. It can't be managed off the side of somebody's desk. It can't be a committee in charge of this. There has to be one person who's responsible for this, because at the end of the day, if you do have a scenario occur, somebody has to be able to take that phone call that says, yep, we've had a breach. They need to know how to swing into action. They need to have a plan that they're comfortable that they can execute. So there has to be a person. It has to be part of their job. It has to be formally defined. You cannot make this a committee or a department level thing and just expect that, they'll figure it out. Obviously, they can't do it alone. They're going to have a team behind them. They're also going to be working with people inside the organization, but you have to really have that one person who has the accountability. So as the person who has the accountability is putting all of this together, it's going to cause a lot of conversations. People are going to want to know, why are we doing this? Why does my password have to be 10 characters long and have a letter in it and have a exclamation mark at the end of it? These are not meant to be punitive. And I really like that. Some people think we just make up password policies because we like to see you guys get frustrated. No, we do it for a reason. And, things like two-factor authentication, they're frustrating for people. If there's a policy in place that says, no, you can't use your company laptop on Starbucks Wi-Fi and download client data over public internet, even though it's convenient, even though they have great lattes. You know, if there's those policies in place, if you don't educate people and you don't explain to them what could happen and why we have these policies, they're just going to try to get around them, or they're going to complain about them. It's going to cause friction. So again, having one person who's accountable, make sure that you've got somebody who can drive those conversations appropriately. Third point on here, which I love, you know, what to do about spam. So many things now are starting with weird emails, and we all get these emails every day where you look at them and you say, is that Microsoft? It has their logo, but it's saying put in my password, putting in my bank details. That doesn't sound right. You know, you can train people on how to identify this stuff. At the end of the day, I always say, if you're not sure, call IT. IT would much rather hear about it when you first get that email. And if you're not sure whether it's legitimate or not, we're happy to hear about it then. When we hear about it after you click the link and after you entered the information and after you sent all of the information over to Nigeria or some foreign country, that's when we don't really want to hear about it. So minor side note on spam, but yeah, always call IT if you're not sure what it is. Hosting, this is really just finding a proper home for your things. And you got to understand that secure and managed hosting that you can use for private information or transactional information or customer information, it's not the same as website hosting. You can go to GoDaddy and you can buy website hosting for $29.99. That is not appropriate hosting for an application that houses customer data, for a transactional application. You know, there are data centers, there are organizations who specialize in secured hosting. They put a lot more work and a lot more segregation and a lot more security around these sorts of hosting services, and they cost a lot more than $29.99. But, you know, appropriate hosting for applications and customer data is different than just getting some hosting for your website. And you need either a team or you need to have those understandings internally on what the different hosting packages are and what's appropriate for what you're trying to do. And social media, you know, it's, you know, having a policy on what people are allowed to put on social media. You know, can you share pictures inside the facility? Can you share, you know, pictures of your clients on Instagram or Snap while they're in the office? These are, you know, it is still personal information. A photo of somebody coming into the office, even if it's a great photo, even if it looks good on your website, that may be information that the client's not comfortable having out there because, oh, by the way, their kids are in the photo. Oh, by the way, you know, you might have left a paper on the desk that somebody could zoom in on. So make sure that you understand what the risks are of using social media. It's a great promotional tool for your business, but it can be a double-edged sword. Once you understand what your organization is comfortable with, get that into a policy, make sure the staff understand the policy and why the policy is in place. And it's something you're going to have to update. You know, there's new social media channels come out every 6 months. So once a year, you'll have to go through, evaluate this, see what's going on, update the policy. And it's not a bad idea to have your staff sign off on the policy every year. You know, it sort of saves you from that excuse of, oh, well, I forgot that was in the policy because I signed it 10 years ago. If the policy is updated every year, everyone signs off every year, then you're not going to have a problem enforcing the rules or have a situation where you're going to be running offside with HR. So I'll hand it back to Jack to summarize. I guess my summary really is just to come back to the starting point. This is something that you need to have a team behind you. It's not something you want to do yourself. And honestly, right now, the threat landscape is worse than it's ever been. With the effects of COVID recently and things that you've all seen in the news and governments getting involved in these things, you know, cybersecurity is a huge topic. There are a huge number of threats out there. So this is the time to put that team in place, the consultants and the technologists, and partner with insurance companies. They'll be able to help you out as well. Get your safety net in place now. And with luck, if you have the right team in place supporting you, you'll always be proactive and you'll never have to react to anything. So Jack, I'll hand it back to you to summarize.
Thanks, Geoff. Clearly, one of the things that we wanted to do today, in addition to scare you with the exposure that you have, is that there are some solutions. There are some paths to protect you. one of the paths that we have in place is one of the sophisticated insurance additions to the errors and omissions or insurance policy that we have in place for you as financial advisors and planners. Look to us to provide this protection for you. We have it already embedded into your policy. You can buy higher limits for it. It's not that expensive. There's no application process. It is quite an extensive type of policy in place. And it is a good way to get that preliminary protection in place for your business and your operation and protects your client's trust. Thank you. Julie?
So thank you, Jack and Geoff. You shared some good information there, some of it disturbing, but definitely good to know. So we're going to move on to our Q&A, but before we do that, we've got one last quick poll question for you. And that question is, do you currently have a cyber liability insurance policy in place for your business? Yes, not sure, no, I don't think it's important at this time. I'll give you a few seconds to answer. Again, your responses are anonymous. Okay, good. So we know the majority of you do, or the majority of you do, and some of you think you do, but have to check. And please do. Definitely a good thing to do based on what we've just learned today and what I'm sure you've all learned about before this as well. So with that, we'll move to the Q&A. And looks like we've got quite a few questions in here. So hopefully we'll get to a few of them. All right, so first question. Are there any cases where cyber liability insurance won't cover you if your data is stolen by people outside of Canada? Jack, I think this one's for you.
Yes, thank you. I did answer that on the Q&A. In one thing that you have to consider when you're looking at your insurance policy that you have under your errors and omissions policy or for your business does it have worldwide territory? If it has worldwide territory, then you don't have to worry so much about if the threat's coming from outside of Canada or North America. Ultimately, the policy will respond anywhere in the world if it is worldwide based, but you do want to make sure that you have coverage that way. If you don't have coverage on a worldwide basis, then if it does end up in court, it will only give you protection in Canada. And there are situations where you may be dragged into court in another jurisdiction or another country. That will be up to you to have to deal with. So you want to make sure that your policy is providing worldwide protection.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Another one here. So this one could be probably from both of you. I am currently sending password protected documents to my clients in emails. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'll take that one to start. And I think I'd thrown something in the chat about this one as well. But you know, everything is in layers. Security is an onion. There's no sort of on or off switch for this stuff. So yes, sending a password protected document in the email better than sending it without the password. An email really just these days, anything you put in an email, you may as well put it on the front page of the newspaper. You know, there are better ways to do it. Secure Dropbox, tools that are dedicated to file transfers like WeTransfer. If you're inside an organization and you've set up things like SharePoint or Teams where you've got end-to-end encrypted file transfers, you know, those are a next level up. So, you know, certainly putting a password on your file in the email better than nothing, but you may also, if it's very sensitive information, you may want to look at what the next level up could be for you.
And Jack, are there any liability concerns with sending that kind of information with just a password by email?
No, we've begun to see some insurance underwriters become prescriptive in how they require you to deal with your security concerns. But in our program right now, we don't have any obligations. We trust that your organization, your sponsor, your insurance company have compliance and procedures in place that will protect the interests of your clients. And that's what we're relying on.
All right, thanks, Jack. Another question here. So if I've been breached, what do I do and what will it potentially cost me?
Well, the first thing you need to do is contact us, either by email or by phone. We will alert Zurich Insurance Company if you're insured through us, and Zurich will call you immediately. Speed is a real important issue with regards to these kind of situations. The cost ultimately depends on what kind of protection you have, if you have protection, number one. The second part is if you don't have protection, insurance protection, you're now subject to what the consultative cost could be with a security company. And then you are talking about significant amounts that you have to deal with. So that's sort of what my part of the answer could be. Maybe Geoff, you can give a more real-time description of what happens when you don't have insurance.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it. Speed is the key. You need to immediately be taking steps. What I generally say, stop it and mop it. You need to stop what's happening, stop the breach as quickly as you can. That may mean you're literally going into the serving room and unplugging your internet connection. Whatever it takes to stop that transaction, to stop that data moving. And then you have to mop it up. You have to clean up what's happened. You have to close the holes. You have to find a way to prevent it again. You have to bring the systems cleanly back online. It's a lot of mopping up after the fact. But yeah, speed is very important. Having things in place beforehand, knowing who's going to take the call, knowing that you have an insurance company to reach out to. It's much better to be paying, the insurance premiums and the managed service vendor fees and everything up front and be prepared. Because if you get caught, I say this, go to Google and type in, security companies or, managed security services. Look at all the websites. Everybody on their front page has a 1-800 number that says, if you're experiencing a breach, call this 1-800 number. That does not go to their technical response team. That goes to their sales team, because they know that if you're in the middle of a breach, you're very prepared to open your wallet. So very expensive to react after the fact if you haven't put these plans in place.
Thanks, Geoff. All right. How can you ensure the cloud is secure? So kind of in response to some of the questions from before and the responses. So your response, Geoff, had been like any other technology, only as secure as you can make it. So is there anything you'd add to that? And
it is, you can go to Dell and you can buy a server these days and you can plug it into your back office and plug it into the wall. And if it's not defended, if you haven't put some security around it, immediately it starts getting attacked. I think they've done studies where you can put a fresh Windows machine on the internet and it's going to start being attacked within 8 minutes. That's how quickly the threats come in. The nice thing about the cloud is, if you spin up a server on Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud or Azure, it lives inside an environment. It lives inside Microsoft's environment or Amazon's environment. So it comes up online with a better set of defenses. It comes up online with a thicker shell. But still, it's, if that's all you do, if you just turn it on and walk away from it, it's still going to start getting attacked in 8 minutes. And, it's only as secure as you make it. So it really is. The cloud is a little bit better because your cloud servers or your cloud applications live in a larger ecosystem that's better defended. But at the end of the day, it's still on you to make it as secure as you can.
Thank you. And last quick question. This one I think has a quick answer to it. Does Advocis offer any cyber insurance? Jack.
The answer is yes. The current program that we have for individual advisor and planners, errors and omissions insurance has 25,000 automatic coverage of cyber insurance. It is a quite sophisticated protection. It's not similar to other programs that may be very cyber light, as I can call it. This has pretty well-established resources behind this policy. And we have options to go for nominal charges up to $250,000 in protection for the individual advisor and planner.
All right. Thanks, Jack. There are a ton of questions that we've gotten. Obviously, this is a really, really hot topic. Hopefully, we'll be able to have you back soon. probably for a full kind of Q&A session for the entire duration. I think we could easily kill 30 minutes with just the questions we received. So thank you so much for joining us today and for your presentation. And hopefully we'll see you again soon. And with that, take care. And with that, I invite you all to stay tuned on February 20th. We have our next coffee talk with Will O'Neill, Corporate Communications Specialist at Advocis. He's backed by popular demand, and he'll be sharing tips on how you can expand your reach using social media. So thank you for joining Coffee Talks today. We'll be sending you a follow-up email tomorrow that will include a recording of the session. If you join us by phone, please email events@advocis.ca and let us know what number you joined from, first and last name, and Advocis ID. CE credits will be loaded into your online CE tracker through the Advocis website within the next 3 business days. For more information, please visit our website, advocis.ca. If you have questions for Jack and Geoff, please email communications@advocis.ca. And if you want more information about Coffee Talks, please email us at events@advocis.ca. With that, I wish you all a fantastic day and thank you again for joining us. Take care.